Nunziata, can I just do a sound check, please? You're on mute. It's the green button. I'm going to call this meeting to order. My name is Deputy Mayor Paul Ainsley. I'm the chair of the General Government Committee. We have quorum, so I'm calling meeting number 31 to order. Welcome, everybody. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person here at City Hall in committee room number 1. This meeting is also being live streamed on youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. For the land acknowledgement, I would like to say on behalf of myself, my colleagues, and all of our amazing staff that although we may be meeting at different locations today, the General Government Committee would like to acknowledge the land we're meeting on is the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also would like to acknowledge Toronto is covered by Treaty Number 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. For the members of the committee, I'd just like to remind everyone the city clerk has provided all of our agenda materials on toronto.ca/council as well as the clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available for members if you need any help with your electronic devices. And a reminder to please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at ggc@toronto.ca to help with motions. For deputants, and there's only one registered today, if you're registered to speak at today's meeting, if you could please listen for me to call your name. I'll call speakers in the order that they appear on the list. The list of speakers can be viewed by visiting the General Government website or page on the Toronto website at toronto.ca/council and clicking on the speakers box for today's meeting. At this point, I'm going to ask if there are any declarations of interest under the Ontario Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Seeing none, can I have a motion to confirm the minutes of our last meeting on June 2nd, 2026? Moved by Councillor Holyday. All in favor? That carried. Members, we have 41 items on today's agenda. I'm going to run through the agenda, do the agenda rundown now. Lock that there. All right, our first item is GG 31.1, an OMERS update to the City of Toronto. There's a presentation for that, so I'm going to hold that. Item number 2 is GG 31.2, an annual update on the OMERS employer contributions. I would like to hold that. Number 3 is time for 9:45. It is GG 31.3, apportionment of property taxes for July 20th, 2026. This is a public hearing. Also time for 9:45, GG 31.4, cancellation, reduction, or refund of property taxes or payment in lieu of taxes as of July 20th, 2026. I'm going to hold that. GG 31.5, amendment to blanket contract 470-2454-546 and 470-24551 with 911 Interpreters Incorporated for real-time over-the-telephone interpretation services for court services and revenue services and issuance of a new blanket contract for people in equity. Anybody like to hold that? Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Chang. All in favor? That carries. Our next item is GG 31.6, amendment to blanket contract 47025775 with ONX Enterprise Solutions Incorporated for VMware software products and support. Can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Holyday. All in favor? That carries. Our next item is GG 31.7, amendment to blanket contract 470259906 for fire and life safety systems. Moved by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? That carries. Our next item is GG 31.8, collection of provincial offense fines. Councillor Thompson's holding number 8. Number 9 is GG 31.9, amendment to purchase order 604-8845 with CH2M Hill Canada Limited for design engineering services for the RL Clark Water Treatment Plant standby generation and new building project. Moved by Councillor Holyday. On favor? That carries. GG 31.10, amendment to purchase order 605-6419 with Standec Consulting Limited for professional services for the Scarlet Road Underpass Bridge replacement and road network improvements at the Canadian Pacific Kansas City Limited / Metro Rail Corridor. This is in Ward 5 and Ward 4. Councillor Nunziata, did you want to speak to this, or? Sorry, you're on mute.
Oh, just a sec. What's going on?
I can hear you now, Councillor.
Okay. Yeah, if you can just move the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I will move the recommendations in number 10. On favor? That carries. Number 11, GG 31.11, amendment to purchase order 605-7084 with Devon Paving Limited for the construction of asphalt speed humps in the City of Toronto. Hold by Councillor Thompson. Number 12, GG 31.12, amendment to purchase order number 604-8204 with Reed Jones Christopherson Limited and purchase order number 605-6498 with Pega Construction Limited for the rehabilitation of the Upper Young Daycare Center, Ward 8, Eglinton, Lawrence. Moved by Councillor Burnside. On favor? That carries. Number 13, GG 31.13, award of document 547-4040786 to Bennett Mechanical Installations 2001 Limited for pumping station retrofit Western Beaches Tunnel Phase 2, an amendment to purchase order 604-6087 and 605-3027 to Stantec Consulting Limited for services during construction and post-construction services. Any holds? Moved by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? That carries. GG 31.14, amendment to purchase order number 605-4517 with Bennett Mechanical Installations 2001 Limited and Construction Contract Administration purchase order number 605-1143 with GHD Limited for the Ashbridges Bay Treatment Plant D Building Phase 2 Upgrades Project. I have a mover, Councillor Chang. On favor? That carries. GG 31.515, amendment to purchase order number 605-6305 with Drainstar Contracting Limited, Construction Contract 3 for the Fairbanks Silverthorne Basement Flooding Protection. Any holds? Can I have a mover? Councillor Burnside. On favor? That carries. GG 31.16, amendment to purchase order number 605-437 with Stantec Consulting Limited for professional engineering services for the Bridge Program Management, Assignment 2. Moved by Councillor Holyday. On favor? That carries. GG 31.17, amendment to various blanket contracts for biosolids haulage and beneficial use and the supply of polymar for Toronto Water. Any holds? Moved by Councillor Burnside. On favor? That carries. GG 31.18, award of document 547-1369482 to ASCO Construction Toronto Limited for the construction of offline storage tank DWST2 East Don Sanitary Trunk Sewer and amendment to purchase order 604-5927, 605-2716, and 605-5600 with Associated Engineering Ontario Incorporated for the detailed design, service during, and post-construction. Any holds? Have a mover. Councillor Thompson, all in favor? That carries. GG 31.19, award of document 552-827-9713 to Bennett Mechanical Installations 2001 Limited for the Humber Treatment Plant aeration blower system upgrades. Moved by Councillor Holyday. All in favor? That carries. GG 31.20, award of document 5644849-697 to CAP Infrastructure Incorporated for Rockcliffe Riverine Flood Mitigation Project Phase 1, Jane Street Bridge over the Black Creek Bridge replacement for engineering and construction services in Ward 5.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Nunziata.
Yes, if I can ask you to move the recommendation, and you have received a number of communication letters from my constituents supporting the item. And I want to thank staff for the report. It's been over 20 years, so thank you very much. And if you can move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nunziata. I will move the recommendations on your behalf, and then just want to thank you. I also sit on the board of directors of the TRCA, so I know all the work that you've done on behalf of your community on this project, so thank you very much for all your dedication.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm moving the recommendations for number 20. All in favor? That carries.
Okay. Done.
Number 21, GG 31.21, amendment to blanket contract 470-22313 with Beanfield Metro Connect for wide area network services.
Is Marion
Have a
still here?
mover. Moved by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? That carries. Number 22, GG 31.22, amendment to master service agreement, amendment to purchase order 605-3207, and executing various purchase orders with eBuilder Incorporated for subscriptions and professional services. Moved by Councillor Burnside. On favor? That carries. Number 23, GG 31.23, amendment to purchase order 7200000116 with Medallia Incorporated for digital data collection and analyst tool.
I'd like to hold this one, please.
Councillor Cheng's holding number 23. Number 24, GG 31.24, amendment to purchase order number 6050426 with IntraHealth Canada Limited for electronic medical records solution. Moved by Councillor Holyday. On favor? That carries. GG 31.25, authority to reallocate funds for the effluent disinfection system upgrades project at Ashbridges Bay Treatment Plant. Moved by Councillor Thompson. On favor? That carries. GG 31.26, award of document 5534-207-3116 to Alberici Construction Limited for the replacement of raw water pumps and traveling screens at the Island Water Treatment Plant, amendment of purchase order 7100000228 and 7100000229 with RV Anderson Associates Limited for services during construction and post-construction. Moved by Councillor Chang. On favor? That carries. Number 27, GG 31.27, non-competitive contract with Bloomberg Finance LP for the provision of continued leasing proprietary software and data services. Moved by Councillor Holyday. On favor? That carries. Number 28, GG 31.28, non-competitive contract with Comtex Solacom Technologies Incorporated for the provision of software and hardware, installation and configuration of Guardian Next Generation 911 and related maintenance services. Moved by Councillor Holyday. On favor? That carries. GG 31.29, non-competitive contract with Awood Hunt and Associates Incorporated. Moved by Councillor Burnside. On favor? That carries. GG 31.30, non-competitive contract with Chimera Water Solutions Canada Incorporated for the supply of iron salts at wastewater treatment plants for Toronto Water. Moved by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? That carries. Number 31, GG 31.31, non-competitive contract with Letner Palma Canada for supply and maintenance of the ski lifts at Earl Braille Ski and Snowboard Center and rope tow lift at the Don Valley Golf Course for park and recreation. Moved by Councillor Chang. All in favor? That carries. Number 32, GG 31.32, non-competitive contract with Genoptic Smart Mobility Systems LLC for red light camera systems. So moved by Councillor Holyday. All in favor? That carries. GG 31.33, non-competitive contracts with suppliers for the supply of proprietary parts and maintenance services of water and wastewater treatment plants for Toronto Water. Moved by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? That carries. GG 31.34, summary of open competitive awards made by the Chief Procurement Officer for May 2nd to June 12th, 2026. Moved by Councillor Burnside. All in favor? That carries. GG 31.35, community space tenancy lease agreement with the Wood Green Community Services at 90 Mill Street and 373 Front Street. Moved by Councillor Chang. All in favor? That carries. GG 31.36, nominal lease with the Birchmount Bluffs Neighborhood Center at Birchmount Community Center. Moved by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? That carries. Number 37, GG 31.37, authority to accept a bequest donation for Fudger House Long-Term Care Home. Moved by Councillor Holyday. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. GG 31.38, amendment to non-competitive contract with DocuPet Incorporated for the provision of pet license services. So I was told
I'd like
on
to
this,
hold this. Okay.
sorry, there's an issue with the finances, Councillor Cheng. So I've been asked to move a motion to request the Executive Director, Municipal Licensing and Standards, and the Chief Procurement Officer to report directly to the July 29th, 30th, and 31st, 2026 meeting of City Council to provide updated financial information related to the proposed contract amendment.
I also have a few questions on this item.
Okay. Do you want to deal with it this morning?
Yes,
or at
please.
Council? This morning?
I guess if we're going to move it to council, I could ask the questions at council. Yeah, I'll ask them at council.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All in favor of my amendment? Carried. Item as amended? No. All right. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, when I said thank you, I meant about the bequest.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want to overlook that. You know, the city received a donation, a considerable donation for Fudger House, and I think that's special. And I just wanted to acknowledge that we received that, although there hasn't been a committee debate. Thank you. Perfect.
Thank you, Councillor Holyday. And it is substantial, $800,000. Our next item, GG 31.39, litigation arising from the Baycrest Park revitalization, Phase 1. Have a mover, Councillor Chang. All in favor? Carried. GG 31.34, amendment to Toronto Municipal Code, Chapter 217, records corporate for the city. Have a mover, Councillor Burnside. All in favor? That carries. And our last item on the agenda is GG 31.41, updating the administrative authorities to support digital public engagement and 311 service delivery.
Mr. Chair, I had a question of staff.
Okay. I will hold that for Councillor Holyday. All right.
Mr. Chair, just on a point of order.
Councillor Thompson?
I have to leave to do a press conference with the mayor that she's doing this morning. I have to leave in about 15 or 20 minutes. I think the presentation that you referred to earlier on from Armors is going to take a little bit more time, right? And so what I'd like to do is I'm happy to ask my questions that I have for GG 31.8 and GG 3111 at council. So I'm happy to just move that, those two items,
Okay,
and I'll ask those questions. I don't think I'll be back in time. I don't think there's sufficient time for it.
okay, so you're gonna move,
okay?
or you're releasing number 8?
I'll release number 8 and number 11.
All right, so Councillor Thompson's releasing GG 31.8, collection of provincial offenses fines. If nobody else has questions on it, all in favor? Sorry?
Vote to adopt it. Individual votes, so vote to
Yep.
adopt it and then vote to allow.
Yep, yep, so all in favor of number 8, and that carries.
And 11.
And now we're gonna take care of number 11. One more page. Councillor Thompson is releasing GG 31.11, amendment to purchase order 605-70884 with Vaughan Paving Limited for the construction of asphalt speed humps in the city of Toronto. All in favor of the recommendations in number 11, and that carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. All right, so I'm going to take care of number 3 and number 4, because they're time for 9:45. So our first item, next item is GG 31.3, which is time for 9:45, apportionment of property taxes as of July 20th, 2026, and this is a public hearing. We don't have any deputants,
Not on 2, not on 3. Let's go ahead.
so I can move the recommendations on number 3. All in favor of the recommendations on number 3, carried. Our next item is GG 31.4, cancellation, reduction, and refund of property taxes or payment in lieu of taxes as of July 20th, 2026. And I have one registered deputant, Mr. James Kahn, representing 204-9390 Ontario Limited. Is Mr. Kahn here? Morning, Mr. Kahn.
Hi, good morning. Yes, I happen to own that property there under the corporations. This is my first time coming to any city meetings. I'm not
morning.
familiar with any procedures.
You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, basically, I just want to submit that I got the bailiff order say that I have owing tax, and I find out that my tax has been increased from previous years to $80,000, which is a vacant land under constructions. And then I always have difficulties putting it together while for going through the constructions throughout the pandemics and whatnot. It has been in delay and whatnot. So I just don't know what to do because it has increased from previous years from about $35,000 to over $80,000. I'm not familiar with the procedures, and was just meeting one of the revenue clerk outside when I came here today. She told me that that's because of my tax rate had increased. MPAC, actually, I went to MPAC and I told, I talked to someone there and they said that, yeah, they realize it's still a vacant land, and it was actually burned down in 2012. It's been staying vacant for all these years, but then my tax rate is about $30,000, $40,000 all along, and all of a sudden it's jumped to over $80,000. And I'm having financial difficulties while putting together, while trying to continue with construction. It's almost ready, and then I have faced with a lot of problem because that Toronto Hydro would want about $500,000 just to do the power connections. And then it took me about 2.5 years for them to make adjustment. It's now been brought down, but that is carrying costs, so it doesn't really work one way or the other. And then they said that there will be a delay in connections, so I won't even have power until maybe later this year. They said it's going to be a 6 months wait. So I just don't know what to do because this is really tight on my situations. And then I'm just coming here because I just got the, I make the appeal under the, I think, 323, section 323. And I was only told that to come here just about a week ago. I received a letter that says that I can file some of my further appealing letters to, but I have to submit it before June 15. And that actually, I don't receive this letter until last week. So I'm kind of lost. I don't know what to do.
Sorry, sir, you got a letter last week telling you need to make a submission by June 15th of last month?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, we just have some questions for you, and then Councillor Holiday first.
There's lots of people listening today. Could you tell us the address?
See what?
The address. What's the address of the
The
property?
address is actually 369 Queen Street West.
Queen West, okay. Do you know what ward that's in by chance?
I don't know. I select only because I haven't been to any of those meetings or city meetings or council meetings. I personally
That's
live
a
in
good
Markham. I am not familiar with which.
So your property is vacant right now?
Oh, it has been almost done. It's waiting for Toronto Hydro.
Okay.
Toronto Hydro for its power installation.
Okay.
I was kind of in a situation that I was because I cannot even have the elevator installed until I have power because they need three-phase power for the elevator.
What kind of a building is it?
It's a 3-story commercials, and then the ground floor is only, it has a footprint of 3,000 square feet.
Okay.
And when I was first slapped with the hydro bill, Toronto Hydro bill, they said they want $500,000, $450,000 plus HST. I was shocked, and then I was trying to deal with them, and they said, okay, it will take me, that was in 2022 or 2023.
Okay.
And I talked to them, and they said that they said it will take me about 6 months for the appeal and reassessment.
Okay.
But it took me over 2 years.
And so have you ever applied to have your property taxes reduced for any reason on the site?
Well, I thought that I don't know about the procedures because I'm not a big developer or anything. It's just that got burned down. I'm trying to catch up with it and try to rebuild
So you
it.
haven't?
No.
Okay. All right. And you understand what we're doing here today is many people around the city have made applications to reduce, and this is where it gets approved. But that's based on some work beforehand to arrive here.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. What you told us is very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Holiday. Yep. Other questions of the deputant? Okay. Sorry, Councillor Cheng.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm just wondering, you mentioned that the property burned down in 2012, and then you've been in the process of rebuilding it. When I look on Google Maps, I see a new building that is still has hoarding around it. And I guess and now you're just waiting for hydro connection in order for this building to be functional again?
Actually, to be exactly what I'm waiting for, I have to get power to bring in power. We have connected to temporary power, which can only facilitate some of the constructions inside, but we won't have, in order for us to complete it, we need to have three-phase power into the building for Coney to install the elevator, and then without the power, without the permanent power, I cannot do sprinkler tests, I cannot do fire alarm tests, I cannot even hook up with gas and everything. Everything is just pending. So it's a domino impact on me that I cannot finish it.
Yes.
I was holding for it all this time for almost like 6-7 months.
So from 2012 until now, this building has not been occupied by any person or business.
No,
Is that correct?
I don't even have the occupancy permit.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cheng. Other questions of the deputant? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Khan. Part of the process now is we ask staff questions about your concerns. So you can return to your seat, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in this morning. Okay, questions of staff. Councillor Holiday?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could staff confirm the address that the speaker talked about, 369 Queen Street West, is not in the report today?
Good morning. Through the chair, it is on the report, page 7 of 18.
Oh, it is? Okay. 7 of 18.
In Appendix A.
369. Okay. So I'll just ask a more general question. Could you explain what's inside the report here that as it pertains, I see it now, it's at the top of the page, except it says the total tax adjustment is 0, and the reason was unsaleable due to repairs or renovations. So could you just explain a little bit about what is behind the number in the report so that everybody can hear the analysis?
Certainly. Through the chair, the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation has confirmed that on the assessment roll, the property was returned as vacant land. The application before committee today is based on unusable, based on renovations, which has already been considered within the assessment. So the application does not cancel taxes in its entirety. The property owner is still required to pay for taxes associated to the vacant land portion of the assessment.
So do you have any helpful advice for anyone that's listening, including the applicant, about how they may continue their file, or has all of the analysis been done and this is the result? And there's, I guess, limitations on the time period that this can happen.
So through the chair, there are options available to the taxpayers. If they are not in agreement with the recommendation that's before the committee today, they can appeal to the Assessment Review Board within 35 days of the notice of decision. However, if they are dissatisfied with their assessment, they have two options with the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. They can file a request for review, which I believe the deadline is March 31st for the 2027 taxation year, or they can file an appeal with the Assessment Review Board so that they can have their assessment reviewed.
Thank you. Those were all my questions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Holiday. Other questions of staff on this item? Councillor Cheng?
Just to clarify, so this deputant mentioned that he previously was paying $30,000 and now it's $80,000, and that $80,000 is an assessment based on vacant land?
That's correct. And 2012 is when the fire happened and he applied for a demolition. So since then, the property has been assessed as vacant land.
Do you know how much it would cost if it was occupied? What would that ballpark be for a property on Queen West?
So the City of Toronto is not responsible for creating the assessment on the property. That would be a question for MPAC to address.
Okay, so moving forward, he has the two options that you outlined with Councillor Holiday, but basically the $80,000 is what MPAC has assessed for vacant land. Is that correct?
The assessment is $6,260,000. The $80,000 is the taxes. So the city bills in accordance to the assessment. So it's the tax rate multiplied by the current value assessment.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cheng. Other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none, can I just ask, so the deputant seems a bit confused about where he's got to be going and dealing with MPAC.
Yeah, through the chair, absolutely, we can have a conversation to assist him.
Okay, all right. Mr. Khan, our staff are gonna talk with you after this item about making sure you understand your options to deal with this. Okay, all right, thank you. Speakers on this item? Can I somebody move the recommendations?
Oh, there's a step.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry, there is a motion. There's an adjournment motion from
Okay.
staff.
Do I have to read this whole thing? All right, the recommendation number 1 be amended to read as follows. The General Government Committee approved the individual tax appeal applications made pursuant to Section 323 of the City of Toronto Act 2026, resulting in tax reductions, including phase-in/capping amounts identified in the detailed hearing report marked as Appendix A to the report June 29, 2026, from the Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer, Finance and Treasury Services, excluding the following applications. Ward 10, appeal number 202-60170, known as 9 Tecumseh Street, 416, roll number 1904-06-2-1600247. The next one is Ward 9, appeal number 202-60150, property known as 900 Dufferin Street, roll number 1904-02-4-500. 01401. Number 3 is in Ward 22, appeal number 202-60067, property address known as 2900 Warden Avenue, roll number 1901-10-4-185-00100. And the last one is in Ward 10, appeal number 202-50520, known as 500 King Street West, roll number 1904-06-2-350-02105. Any questions of me as the mover? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment? That carries. Item is amended. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Okay, our next item is GG 31.1, Omer's update to the City of Toronto, and this is Omer's annual presentation to us. Good morning. Welcome back to City Hall, or welcome to City Hall.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here again this morning. As a reminder, I'm going to jump ahead to one slide if I could. Thank you. As a reminder, my name is John Armstrong. I am the city's nominee to the OMERS Administration Corp Board. I'm joined here today by Celine Chiavetti, our Chief Pension Officer. And I would also like to note that George Cook, sitting right behind me, our independent board chair, is also in attendance with us today. You may recall that in previous years, the City of Toronto's nominee to the Sponsor Corporation Board was also present for these updates. Earlier this year, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing ordered the Sponsors Corporation to wind up its affairs, and on March 31st of this year, the Sponsors Corporation ceased formal operations. In due course, the Sponsors Corporation will be succeeded by a Sponsors Council. But before I begin, I did want to thank my colleague, Juliana Carbone, who I know a number of you are familiar with, for her partnership, and I look forward to working with the city's nominee on the Sponsor Council going forward. Our update today is going to cover 3 areas. First, a quick snapshot of the City of Toronto's membership demographics. Secondly, a review of our 2025 financial results. And then an update from Celine on administration matters and the transition to the new Sponsors Council. So starting on slide 4 with some demographics. To refresh, there are approximately 48,000 OMERS plan members across the City of Toronto and its agencies, boards, and corporations, representing just over 13% of the OMERS members, and the city is the largest single employer in the plan today. Diving right into our financial results for the year 2025, the plan demonstrated resilience in the face of political and economic turbulence, delivering a 6% return in 2025. Over 10 years to 2025, the primary plan delivered a 7.1% return. And I would note that at the end of 2025, the funded status for the plan was up 1% from the prior year and now stands at 99%. I'm going to speak more in a little bit more detail on this point towards the end of my comments, but I'll continue on the discussion about returns. This slide here shows that 6 of our 7 major asset classes delivered positive returns in 2025. Looking at the orange box, it was a strong year for public equities. This was the 3rd consecutive year of double-digit returns for this asset class. In the light blue box, it was also a good year for fixed income investments, led by our private credit, with an 8.3% return. Turning to the dark blue box, there was a pleasing recovery in our real estate book. This is an asset class that delivered positive returns last year, following several years of challenge in the real estate industry. Unfortunately, not all of our asset classes are operating at their full potential, or were operating at their full potential in 2025. The private asset classes, which for many years have delivered strong and consistent returns, aren't operating at their potential right now. Private equity, as you see in the chart, is a good example of that. And finally, I'd like to touch on currency, because it was a very significant driver of investment returns in 2025. In particular, the US dollar, to which we have significant investment exposures, had a very pronounced pullback. Its largest pullback against the G7 countries in many years. That hurt OMERS returns by about 1.3%. Thankfully, our hedging strategies were quite effective and protected approximately 70 basis points of return. If we flip ahead, this is a chart that I've showed you before, looking at our 5-year return as of 2025 of 7.7%. That compares very favorably to the population of 28 global pension and sovereign wealth funds that I have shown in previous updates. The major Canadian plans have been flagged with a maple leaf, and we've included an average of the group at 6.7%. Our consistent returns over 5 and 10 years translates into consistent asset growth. In 9 of the last 10 years, our assets have increased. The only year that saw a pullback was 2020, the year of the pandemic. It is important that our assets continue to grow so that we can fund our liabilities, but also because it enables us to attract and retain high-quality global investment talent to manage our portfolio. On my next 2 slides, I'm going to speak to diversification, the diversification of the portfolio. And this is a very important point. Our diversification across quality assets is a key feature of the portfolio. And in fact, it's what enabled the portfolio to demonstrate resilience in times of turbulence, as was the case in 2025. This pie chart in front of you shows our diversification by asset class. We're well diversified today. But I would also note that an asset liability study is underway this year to consider whether any adjustments make sense. The early work, however, indicates that what we have today already positions us well for the future. Our assets are also well diversified geographically. This chart shows the distribution of assets across geographies. Today, it's about 18% Canada, 55% the United States, 17% in Europe, and 10% in Asia and the rest of the world. In the images on this slide, you'll see Yorkdale Shopping Centre, which is one of the most productive shopping centers in North America, Scarborough Town Centre, where last year we broke ground on a major purpose-built rental housing development, Bruce Power, which generates 30% of the electricity here in Ontario, and The Stack, which is an office tower built by Oxford in Vancouver that is Canada's first net zero building. OMER's financial strength is recognized by 4 of the most significant global credit rating agencies. 3 of these agencies rate OMERS at AAA, which is the highest rating available. The 4th is 1 notch below that. That AAA rating is higher than 5 of the G7 countries. It's about the same as Canada, and it's second only to Germany. Before I turn to my last few slides to discuss our funded ratio, I did want to highlight the positive impact that OMERS is having on the provincial economy. OMERS contributes about $15 billion to our provincial GDP. That's up 11% from 2023. We generate approximately $4 billion in tax revenue for the provincial and federal governments and support over 135,000 jobs across the province. Indeed, 1 in 11 households in the province are positively impacted by OMERS. I'm going to go through these next 3 slides a little bit slower because there's a lot of detail on these slides, but I think it's an important concept around our funded ratio. As I mentioned earlier, the funded ratio has improved to 99% in 2025. On this slide, the light blue line shows the funded status of the plan over time, and the dark blue line represents the discount rate. That is the interest rate that we assume to calculate our liabilities. A lower discount rate is more conservative, and a more conservative funded status creates greater financial strength for the plan. In turn, greater financial strength for the plan creates greater security for our members. Today, OMERS is financially stronger and more conservatively funded than it has been for many years. If we double click on the improvement in our funded ratio from 92 to 99 over the last 10 years, that improvement came from a number of places. Firstly, our investment returns contributed 16%. This means that the returns we generated were greater than the liability needs of the plan. We've used those surplus investment returns to pay down the discount rate. And again, when we reduce our discount rate, we create more security in the plan. On top of that, our members and employers have continued contributing to the plan. Those contributions today are calibrated a little bit higher than the minimum needs under the Act, which also is making the plan stronger. These factors combined have enabled us to absorb some risks that we have had to overcome over the last number of years. In the wake of the pandemic, I think you are all familiar with the inflation increase that resulted. It hit 8% at one point, which is much higher than the assumption embedded in our liability of 2%, and we had to reserve for that. We have also recently reserved a few $1 billion to take into account the fact that human life expectancy is continuing to improve. In 1965, to give you some context, when OMERS was founded, if somebody made it to 65, their life expectancy would have been 81 years. Today, it's 89, and by 2045, it is expected to be 91. So as I said a moment ago, we are financially stronger and more conservatively funded. Turning to my last slide, there is also significant buffer in our current discount rate, which is important for protecting the financial strength of the plan going forward. The dark blue line is our discount rate. You can see that line getting lower and lower as the board has taken steps to reduce it over time. The light blue line is the actuary's estimate of what future investment returns for the plan are expected to be over a 20-year period. I would note that these lines are both expressed in real terms, that is, in other words, before inflation. But you can see that the margin of safety is about as large as we've seen in many years. The reason for that is that we are in a much better interest rate environment for defined benefit pension plans. If we look back 3 or 4 years ago, interest rates were extremely low. That's good for borrowers, but it's not ideal for savers. And as a pension plan, we are savers. The better interest rate environment combined with the lower discount rate that we are using means that we're funding our plan in a more conservative way as we look ahead to the future. I'm going to leave it there, and I'll turn it over to Celine.
Thank you, John. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of committee. I'm happy to be here today to provide just a few supplementary comments with respect to OMER's governance, contribution rates, and membership demographics. John touched earlier on the fact that we are in the middle of a governance review, and so just a bit of a reminder, late in 2024, the government launched a review of OMER's governance at the request of several sponsors who were concerned about the transparency, consultation, and representation within the plan and within decisions being made at the sponsors corporation. As a result of that, Special Advisor Robert Poirier published a report in November of last year that included several recommendations to improve the effectiveness, transparency, and representation of the plan. Part of those recommendations were to wind up the sponsors corporation and to replace it with a council that would be made up of direct sponsors. And so City of Toronto would be part of the new council. And they also, as part of the legislation, the government tasked OMERS with the job of creating the initial bylaws of that sponsors council. And so they asked OMERS to go away and create those bylaws and submit them to the government. OMERS, as part of that process, decided to engage sponsors directly in a consultation process. And we worked with sponsors over an 8-week period to get their input on all elements of those bylaws. That process included the City of Toronto, included Local 416 and 79, as well as fire and police. At the end of the day, we were able to produce a document that was submitted to the OMERS Administration Corporation, had the opportunity for the OMERS Administration Corporation Board to ask questions and have robust discussions about it before being transmitted to the government on June 5th of this year. At the same time, I wanted to acknowledge that as part of the transition, there is the introduction of 5 observer seats. And so for the first time, we will have the unrepresented groups as part of the council participating in discussions, and we have engaged them throughout the process as well. And so at this point in time, we're in waiting pattern as we're waiting for the government to create some enabling regulations that would allow the council to get up and running. And once that happens, the council will continue to be responsible for benefits and contributions, and sponsors, of course, will continue to be responsible for appointments, benefits, and contributions, and no other changes will happen. And so the Administration Corporation will continue to be the fiduciary and administrator of the plan. The City of Toronto will continue to have a nominee on the AC, as well as direct representation on the Sponsors Council. Prior to the Sponsors Corporation being wound up, in late 2024, the Sponsors Corporation made a decision to reallocate the bucket of contributions with respect to plan members. And so what that means is overall, the intent was never to collect more money within the plan, but it was to sort of reallocate the contributions based on 4 different buckets. And so trying to really simplify this, but essentially we receive contributions based on whether you are a normal retirement age 65 member, which is sort of the majority of the group, or if you are an NRA 60 member, which makes up from police and firefighters. Essentially what the Sponsors Corporation did was reallocate those buckets so that all of police and firefighters will see slightly higher contributions beginning in January 2027. And for those within the NRA 65 group who make above the year's maximal earnings, so that's set by the Canada Revenue Agency, it's about $74,000. You will submit slightly higher contributions, and those who earn less will submit slightly lower contributions. At the end of the day, for the City of Toronto, the net impact is about an increase of $8.3 million annually starting in January of 2027. And I know that the city staff following this has more details around that increase. Again, decisions made back in 2024 that will be implemented on Jan 1, 2027. If I flip over to OMER's membership demographics, as Chief Pension Officer, this is sort of an area that I really pay attention to. A few comments here. We have 665,000 members today, so we are a growing plan, but the type of work is changing. So over the past 3 years, we've introduced and welcomed over 120,000 non-full-time employees who would not have had access to the plan in the past. Today, we serve 5 generations of members, and so our youngest member today is 14 years old. Our oldest member is 106. We have over 250 centenarians who are collecting a pension from this plan. Our oldest member has been receiving a benefit for over 40 years. And so when John talks about, what the dollars we're putting on the book with respect to longevity, we are seeing that within the plan. And just a reminder that as a defined benefit pension plan, our promise is very simple. When you retire with OMERS, you receive a benefit, you receive income for the rest of your life, no matter how long you are living. The other phenomena we're seeing is just a growing increase of women being enrolled into this plan. And so today, the overall demographic is made up of about 60% women into this plan. Now, as our baby boomers are sort of beginning to think about retiring and will be retiring over the next few years, by 2034, about 75% of our plan members will be made up of millennials, Generation Z, and Generation Alpha. And so those will be the active contributing members of the plan. And we are very encouraged by the fact that they are very interested in the plan. And so contrary to what you might think, 85% of members between the ages of 18 and 29 are very interested in understanding about their pension and how that fits into their financial future. And 91% of them have told us that it's one of the key reasons they stay with their employers. And so we're really focused on providing more content and information and educating them about their financial future. 2 of the areas we're focusing on with respect to service, one is in modernizing the way members can purchase their pension when they are out of the workforce. This is an issue that more predominantly impacts women who take more time away from the workforce in order to have and care for children. And so we're modernizing and trying to simplify how they can purchase their pension with us. And then finally, we are really trying to focus on talking to all of our members, again, 5 generations, through different channels and in ways that they want to be listening to us. And so we're really trying to modernize how we communicate about their financial future and working closely with the City of Toronto to continue to engage all elements of members with respect to their financial future. And with that, we will stop and receive questions.
Okay, thank you, John and Celine. Very much appreciated. Questions of the deputants? Councillor Holiday.
Thank you. So slide 18 talks to us about changes to the contribution rates for NRA 65 and NRA 60. Can you tell me a little bit about the philosophies that were used to determine these?
Yes, and I just, again, would clarify, normally you would have a member of the Sponsors Corporation who made these decisions here today. Today you have me. And so the philosophy around it was around equity. And so there was no, when the Sponsors Corporation did a review and essentially looked at the contributions coming in and the demographics of the plan and the actual payments made to the plan, and they felt that the contribution buckets needed to change to be more equitable. And so again, based on the history and the demographics of the plan and the patterns with respect to retirement and withdrawals of the plan, that was the decision that sort of went behind those decisions. Now, I will say it was one of the reasons that sponsors went and asked for a review by the government of these plans, and I don't think it was necessarily around the end result, but definitely the feeling that people were not consulted as part of that process.
So each of the 2 groups, 60 and 65, and somewhere in here there was numbers about what that meant in Toronto. Were their needs calculated within the group, or does one group subsidize the other?
There should be no real subsidization of the groups, but as we pool contributions and liabilities as they come into the plan. And so there wouldn't be anything that was specific to the City of Toronto, but when they looked at the usage of the plan between NRA 60 and so what they were basically paying for and receiving, there was a feeling that there was an inequity there that needed to be leveled off. And so what you'll see is police and fire, NRA 60, essentially they pay higher contributions.
Yes.
For the purpose of being able to retire 5 years earlier. And so they will now be paying slightly more than they were in the past in order to do that.
But those higher payments, do they cover off the extra 5 years of pension?
Correct.
So
Yes.
that balances out. There's not an imbalance in the two.
Correct.
Okay, that's very helpful. In the report, it talks about, I think in the conversation today, you talked about US dollar investment. Which of the 7 classes does that refer to?
So it would be across most of the asset classes to some extent. Government bond, I'll just go through the list on page.
It's fine. If it's spread across them,
It's
that's
spread
fine.
across the
Okay.
investments, both on the private investments as well as the public investments,
so there's
so
not-
equities and credits.
There's not an 8th category of like cash in the bank or bonds or whatever it is. It's, okay.
No, I mean, we do track our cash and our
Okay.
debt obligations, but
So of the 7 asset classes, 5 of them are down from 2024 to 2025, if I've read this right. 2 are up. Is that comparable to other pension funds?
so I would say it compares very favorably in the aggregate to the other pension funds.
Okay.
The fact that they are down is a function of both the political and the economic turbulence that occurred in 2025, which created challenges for markets generally. But the aggregate, as I showed in, I think it was the next slide, relative to other global investors, we actually did quite well over the 5-year time period.
But on the individual classes, did any other pension funds have a strategy to overcome and do better than others?
In 2025, we were in line with the other pension funds, particularly here in Canada.
On the aggregate, it says, it's on slide 5, it says the benchmark is 7.3%, but your 10-year return was 7.1. Could you tell me a little bit more about how I should read the benchmark and what that means?
Yeah, so the benchmark is something that we as a board set on an annual basis. So you can think of the 10-year benchmark as an aggregation of the individual benchmarks that were set by the board each year. That is very much a rigorous process every year to set the benchmark as a target to achieve. And so over that 10-year period, we were just shy of that benchmark by 20 basis points.
So that's the board's target? Okay.
The board's target set with management and agreed by management.
And then this is a
Approved
general...
by the board, if you will.
Okay. This is a general question, because you forgive me, I don't...
No, please.
This is technical. You have a smooth funded ratio. It's improved to 99%. My guess is you want to ultimately get to 100 so that you're fully funded.
Or ideally even higher.
Or ideally higher, it means you got extra. What does the discount rate, is there a relationship between that and the discount rate margin? In other words, does it get so big at some point that it could or should be converted to an improved ratio?
So the relationship between the funded status and the discount rate really is that as you reduce the discount rate, and so think of that as taking conservative steps towards your funding equation. As you reduce the discount rate, all else being equal, the funded status would go down. So I showed you over the last 10 years, we've been reducing our discount rate. If it were not for the investment return surpluses that we achieved, as well as the contributions of employers and members that are slightly in excess of the minimum requirements, then our funded status would have declined. But because we generated greater returns than the liabilities required, we were able to accumulate a better funded status and simultaneously take steps to be more conservative.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Holyday. Questions of the deputants? Councillor Cheng?
Thank you, through the chair. I'm just wondering how much are investments shaped by economic or other policy goals of the different levels of government, in particular Toronto, having a significant contributing role, or are decisions strictly based on financial profitability?
So I would say it's a multitude of factors that go into an investment decision. At the end of the day, we are fiduciaries. It is not our money, it's our members' money, and we have a duty to achieve what we believe to be the best risk-adjusted return. So not just the return, but what does the risk equation look like for each individual investment? So there are absolutely financial considerations that go into that. I would also note that there are sustainability factors that are integrated into all of our investment decisions. So you can think of that as climate issues, social issues, governance issues, et cetera. And then thirdly, I would say that we are very well aware of who our members and stakeholders are, and that is a factor that plays into our decision-making from a day-to-day perspective.
Great, thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chang. Councillor Burnside?
Yeah, thank you. So I think you said your projected returns are going to be 6% going forward? Yeah.
So that's the actuary's estimate of expected returns for the portfolio as it is comprised.
Currently comprised.
Over a 20-year period. And that is noted in real terms, so it's before inflation.
Oh, okay.
So if you assumed inflation
It's 3%,
was 3%, you gotta add that on top of that.
So just so I understand, because I don't really understand a lot of this, if your returns were only 5%, how would that affect your funding? Like every year, it's only 5%. It's 1% lower than what the median or the 20-year expected return is. How would that impact?
So firstly, that would be disappointing to us as a board, for sure, given how we've comprised the portfolio. But the real measure at the end of the day that we should be thinking about is, are we earning our discount rate? And so this is getting back to the prior question. We're lowering the discount rate, which means the required return to achieve becomes lower to meet those needs. And so that's really the conservatism that I speak of.
So if it's 3.7, you just need to make 3.7.
I wouldn't want to say that that's our aim, but...
No, I'm not saying that's the aim. I'm just trying to understand how the system works.
In theory, on a real basis, you would be keeping up with your liabilities. That would, however, assume that you don't have no bumps in the road. You don't have the 8% inflation rates. You don't have life expectancy. So, but yes, in theory, we need to earn our discount rate.
And then what do you need to be funded? And I know, like, you don't have to be 100% fully funded. Once it drops, so you have to get your members and, well, in this case, it would be the city to put in money. I think the teachers fund had to do that, right? Membership, and they had to change all their benefits and whatnot because they were
so
low,
under
right?
a certain threshold, you have to put additional funds in both member and employers in order to make it. I have to double check, but I think it's like below 85%. So it's quite low, yes. But our contribution rates today continue to sort of have that allocation in order to sort of get fully funded. Once we're at 100%, essentially our goal, sponsors corporations, to also 100% and then build a reserve, and so say another 10% to build a reserve, and then you're always sort of looking at balance between conservatism in the plan as well as plan design and contribution rates. Once you're about 110% funded, the sponsors council in the future could make decisions about plan design and contribution rates.
I thought when you got to a certain point, you actually had to make changes. Like you can't be like 120% funded, correct?
You would need to essentially look at, again, the sponsors council would decide what to do with that additional funds. And so you could at that point either improve, for example, improve plan design, reduce contribution rates, things like that. You'll recall back in the day, we were fully funded. And at that point in time, again, the government did require us to do something. And we had a contribution rate holiday. Those laws have now changed. And so so you wouldn't have government interference in that way. But again, once you are fully funded with a reserve, then it's really the job of the sponsors to make decisions about how to balance off the plan in the future.
And then so I got two more questions. And then for people new to the plan, or I think there was a certain period of time, like it's 2023, 2024, whatever that year was, it's up to OMERS, you folks, to decide if the benefits keep pace with inflation. Anyone that was prior is indexed to inflation, but I think, isn't it?
Do you want me to take this? Yeah.
Isn't there something about that?
Yeah, you're talking about shared risk indexing, and so essentially service. So if you're a OMERS member, any of your service beyond 2023 is subject to essentially an annual review. So we pensions are 100% indexed based on month-over-month changes in CPI, and so from 2023 onwards, depending on what's happening with the fund, the sponsors council would be able to make a decision whether to alter that or not. But essentially, service pre-2023 is fully 100% indexed. Service post-2023 gets looked at every year. We have been 100% index protected ever since.
Thanks, and that's what I kind of thought. And so my last question is, the firefighters approached me about one of their concerns, and I think you know where I'm going with that. It was something about they're able to retire at 60, so they pay more.
Yeah.
But I can't remember if it was that they don't actually, very few of them retire at 60. There was something in there, and they feel they're overpaying, and then the city would be overpaying. And I was wondering if there's an update you could share on that.
So yes, I would say those are also some of the concerns that went into the governance review. So the fire overall has some plan design proposals that have been in front of the former sponsors corporation for a number of years, targeted at their ability to assess whether NRA 60 continues to work for the demographic or whether they should look to make changes to move to NRA 65. And so we're very aware of those. We've been working with firefighters, but at this point in time, we're sort of in holding pattern until the Sponsors Council gets formed. But definitely to your point, they are looking at the overall demographics of the plan. I would say back in the day, we were created back in the 1960s. Back in the day, you would have firefighters starting, for example, right after high school. What we're seeing is now firefighters tend to start within the plan at older ages. And so that puts into question, whether they are actually using that 5-year reduction in being able to retire.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sorry, do you have more questions, Councillor Holiday? Would I be able to? Yeah, if you want another round, I'm fine with that. Councillor Burnside and Cheng, are you fine with the second round? Yep, go ahead.
Thank you for your generosity. I appreciate it. How much of the portfolio is long-term, long horizon investment versus market stuff? So, do you own gold? Do you own different commodities, cash investments? Could you just, a general sense of the split? And there was a slide there. You had a shopping mall, an apartment building, and Bruce Power. I'm going to imagine those three are like long-term, like decades. Just a sense, is it?
Correct. Yeah, the best slide to look at on that is slide 9, actually.
Okay. There we go.
And if you think about, so you can see the cash and funding there, we're using funding today, that's the negative.
Okay.
To take advantage of investment opportunities that we see. But I'll maybe just go around the horn. Government bonds is a mix, but there aren't a lot of 30-year government bonds anymore, so those tend to be sort of inside of 10 years. And our duration on fixed income, taking into account public credit and private credit as well, tends to be shorter dated right now. The public equities are obviously those, we don't necessarily hold things to think about trading them, but they are very liquid and we can trade them on a day's notice type of thing. So those are the shorter dated things. The private assets, so the private equity, the infrastructure, and the real estate, that tends to be longer hold period, longer dated investment horizons.
So there's a different skill set, right, on the two of them?
Very different skill set required, yes.
Okay. On the infrastructure side, so can I guess, how much of the infrastructure is stuff that is of, how do I describe it? national importance, public importance. So Bruce Power, for example, would be something that everyone's life and well-being is concerned around, right? This is about the integrity of the electrical system. I can imagine that you've got this all around the world versus a shopping center, which is, I guess, if you're a teenager, it's critical infrastructure, but you know, that's different. It's a different category. Yeah. What's your outlay around the world on that front of the national infrastructure?
Yeah,
How big is that?
You've identified probably the best example of that is Bruce. We do have other electrical or energy related generation, transmission assets that would be of a similar ilk.
Okay. Anything else?
I couldn't give you a specific percentage on that, but a lot of the infrastructure assets are really important to the societies within which they reside. So toll roads, for example, would be very important, but not necessarily at a national level.
And I get it. That's a category of investment. So here's my real question to you after all this.
Yeah.
How does the board or the decision makers weigh political risk around those or geopolitical risk? You know, like all kinds of stuff happens in countries all around the world all the time that would affect for instance, one country could say, we're going to nationalize this. Like that's the end of it. How do you weigh that out and how fine is that monitoring? Is that monthly, weekly? How do you get a grip around that? Because that is very different than markets, right? There's specialists that deal with markets. This is stuff that things, you call it a black swan event, right? Something changes and your asset changes completely and you've done nothing wrong. It just happens. How do you deal with that? That was my last question.
Yeah, it's actually a great question, and it's a multifaceted answer. The most important decision is when you go into the investment, but you get to make that decision again and again, literally every day. You know, you wake up and say, do we still like this investment? Do we still like the risk profile, et cetera? I would say that we tend to be invested, particularly in infrastructure, in what I would characterize as safer geographies, ones that we feel we understand the geopolitical environment, the legal system, et cetera, and we believe there is relative stability within those jurisdictions. But it is a factor that we consider at the point of investment, and it's a factor that we literally have asset managers who monitor this on a regular basis. When things are not going according to plan, what we underwrote when we made the investment decision, there's an escalation process to move that, depending on what that underperformance looks like, to move that up through the organization. And ultimately, some of those investments may appear in front of the investment committee or the board to assess those situations. When things don't go or dramatically diverge from plan, we do have a rigorous process to, I'll call it an after action review process, even after you've perhaps divested the investment, to say, what can we learn from this experience and do differently than we did before?
Thank you, Councillor Holyday. Other questions of the deputants? No. Councillor Cheng? No? Okay. I had a couple. I wanted to ask, so I sit on a number of organizations for the city, AMO, Marco, Big City Mayor's Caucus for AMO, and there's been a lot of discussion around the process that got us to today. And so looking into the draft bylaw, and there's no real wording in the draft bylaw around the administrative corporation's composition. And I'm trying to understand, like, the composition, the terms, remuneration, how they're appointed. And there was the Poyer review, I believe that was in 2012, that said the sponsors should be appointing board members to the admin corp, and now I believe the province is doing that. How did that, was that a provincial decision or?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think
sure,
Chair
Mr. Cook, come on up.
Sorry. In terms of the draft bylaws that went forward on June 5th, they're an incomplete set of bylaws, and that was quite deliberate because there are a number of areas, the appointments process being one of the principal ones, that the government has indicated it's going to pass regulations to establish what that process would be. So when the AC board I actually am the one that transmitted the bylaws to the government. We said, here we go, subject to the areas that we understand from you that you're going to opine on through regulations have not been addressed. When you've done that, we expect you'll send it back to us. We'll then complete the bylaws, send them back to you for your approval. So the process was such that we didn't touch that. Now, in terms of, just to correct on Poirier was the reviewer from 2024, I think. Senator Dean did the review in 2012. But both reviewers are of the view that the sponsors should nominate or appoint, depending on which period you're in, to the AC board. So let me be very clear. Prior to the most recent changes by the current government, a sponsor would nominate to the sponsors corporation. The sponsors corporation would then appoint or not appoint to the AC board. The Poirier recommendation is that the sponsor should appoint directly to the AC board rather than nominate. They would appoint directly to the AC board. It's not, we don't know what the government is going to do with that particular recommendation. So we don't know whether the Sponsors Council will be involved in the appointment process or not. What we have been told is that the government intends to follow the recommendations in Poirier, and Poirier is basically saying the sponsor would appoint directly to the AC board and the Sponsors Council would not have any involvement in that process. So it's impossible to, well, it's not impossible, it's impractical to write a bylaw in advance of knowing what the direction from the government is going to be, and we expect that direction to come sometime this summer.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then, so the OMERS Admin Corp, so the supplementary plan for police, firefighter, and paramedics is winding up in 2028. Is there any, what's the goal beyond is there a goal beyond 2028?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The supplemental plan was not part of the mandate of the governance review, and so Poirier sort of talked about it a little bit, but it was not part of that report. We have an agreement with the MMAH essentially for funding of the supplemental plan. Until such time as there are members in the plan and it becomes self-sustained, the government has an agreement to sort of provide us with information, and so that agreement has already been amended once, and so our intent would be, once the Sponsors Council is formed, to have a real conversation about the future of the supplemental plan. Just a reminder, there are no members within the plan right now. It is a plan that can be negotiated by firefighters, police officers, or paramedics with their employers, and so that has not happened up until now. And so our hope is that the Sponsors Council puts their eye on this and it starts to have some conversations about the future of the plan.
Okay, thank you. And then Bill 68, it requires OMERS to share its full analysis and underlying information on the 2024 contribution rate adjustments. Has that been sent to the City of Toronto?
So those records reside with the Sponsors Corporation, not the OMERS Administration Corporation. And so once the Sponsors Council is formed, then the Sponsors Council would have the ability to share that information. And so that will definitely be something that we advise and articulate to the Council.
Mr. Chair, let me just add to that. At the end of March, effectively, the Sponsors Corporation went, I'm going to say, arguably dormant, in the sense that their staff were let go or alternatively placed in other places, et cetera. But that Sponsors Corporation still sits there and will sit there until such time as a Sponsors Council is formed in order to protect the JSPP status of the plan. As part of that wind-up proposal that came from Sponsors Corporation, ultimately went to the government, and the government chose not to adjust it. Those records are the property of Sponsors Corporation. So I sit here today as the independent board chair of the AC, and I have no more idea than you do about what the Sponsors Corporation actually did or why it did it. It's not likely that until such time as Sponsors Council is formed, and those records are then transferred to Sponsors Council, any of us will know exactly what the thinking was that underlay those proposed changes.
Okay. And then maybe this is to Mr. Cook. So with the new Sponsors Council advisory group that's being formed, is it allowed to amend its own bylaws by its own vote, or is that something that they have to go to the province for?
No, once that my understanding of how this will work is that once the council is formed, the council through a 2/3 vote will be able to amend its bylaws. The issue that sits that, you know, those individuals, those organizations that you referenced when you started your questioning confuse things about is that right now in the old Sponsors Corporation world, lots of things happen through bylaws. Some of what used to happen through bylaws with the corporation will now be subject to regulation that is coming from the government that hasn't yet come. So for example, the corporation had bylaw 4, which was an appointments bylaw. If the government's regulations prescribe how those appointments are to happen, then there's no need for bylaw 4 or anything to replace it with the new council. So that's the void that is sitting there until such time as the government speaks. At least one sponsor would love to draft a bylaw presuming an outcome on that regulation. Most sponsors are of the view that it's senseless to do that, that the government has indicated it's going to actually pass regulations to take the place of those bylaws and wait. And that was the view we took, and hence that's why we sit where we are. The thing that is not, in my view, uncertain is that sponsors will ultimately appoint the members of the AC board and, for that matter, the independent board chair.
Okay. And then in the the enabling legislation that you're talking about, is there anything else that's missing or that OMERS has asked the minister to include that's still being looked at?
We actually have not asked the minister to include anything other than whatever it is that the minister chooses to include. The AC board was very careful through this process not to make recommendations. We clarified what the issues were that various sponsors had raised when the Poirier review started to make sure that Poirier understood what exactly it was he was looking at. We also supplied the government with a set of principles that are necessary for a well-functioning, appropriate, jointly sponsored pension plan arrangement, but we stayed away from making recommendations, unlike what happened back in 2012. And so in this particular instance, I can give you some indication as to what else is missing, but it's not because we've recommended it, it's because it's what's come out of the review that Poirier did for the government. One of the critical things I think that's still outstanding is what I would call a minimum standards regulation. And the purpose of that, as I understand it from the government's point of view, is to make sure that there are base requirements, particularly related to the transparency of operations of the new council, that the council will not be able to obliterate through changing its bylaws. Or put differently, the minimum standards piece that is yet to come may very well, I doubt that it will, but it may very well adjust some of what the draft bylaws are that are going back and forth between the government and ourselves at the moment in order to protect against the issues that gave rise to the government intervention in the first place from repeating itself once the council is formed. So the issues that drove this review were the lack of transparency. In other words, back in 2024, you guys got a surprise one day with these contribution changes and no explanation available as to how they were done or why they were done or when they were done or timing, et cetera. And you will note that the original estimates have changed somewhat dramatically between 24 and what's now expected for 27. I'm in the awkward position in that I can't explain to you what happened because I don't know. You don't know either.
No.
So your minimum standards reg would prevent that kind of behavior from happening with the new council. So we're expecting to see that come forward as well.
Okay. And just my last question, thank you for that. Toronto's seat on the AC board, is that protected in the bylaw? The draft bylaw?
That is not protected in the bylaw, but one of the other regs that will come forward from the government is the government will name the sponsors and may very well offer some prescription as to how those sponsors moving forward will be determined. Right now, they're determined on the basis of effectively population of members, but whether that continues solely or whether other things like the dollar contribution from the particular sponsor is weighted somehow against population, those are all factors that different people made available to Poirier and their recommendations. We don't know where that will land. What we do know with certainty is the City of Toronto will continue to be a sponsor. Okay. The government's made that very clear.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sorry, Councillor Burnside, I took my extra 5 minutes in one lump. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time this morning. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Questions of staff on this item? Any questions of staff? I have a couple. Sorry, where's Mr. McIsaac? Good morning, sir. I just wanted to ask, so there's a package of material that was distributed to sponsors, including yourself. It was mentioned in your report on June 5th, and the deputy mentioned it as well. I'm just wondering why it wasn't included in this package for us to look at, including like the draft bylaw.
Through you, Chair. That information can be made available. It wasn't included in the contribution rate information just because it wasn't related to that, but this information, if there was interest, could be made available.
But it's available to council?
It's with Omer's, that submission, I think, can be made available to council. Yes.
It can be made available to us?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And then could you, I was trying to understand, so when I was reading the draft bylaw, there was a mention about an insurance levy. And by my calculation, the city and its agencies were roughly 17% were the largest payer of that contribution, but there was no mention of it in your financial impact statement in the report.
Through you, Chair. Celine perhaps could answer that from Omer's.
Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to maybe make a clarifying point that one of in the submission that it sounds like council will receive that was transmitted to the government, the recommendation would be to indemnify sponsor council members and to ensure that they are able to have insurance, and so not contemplating a levy. And so I think both Sponsors Council and the Administration Corporation believe that there should not be a levy associated with this put on plan members, and have made a recommendation to the government with respect to our position on indemnity and insurance.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then, sorry, back to Mr. McIsaac. Who represented the city at Omer's Administration Corp, the bylaw engagement sessions? Was that yourself?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay. And how many sessions did that involve?
Over the 8-week period, I think there were 5 or 6 separate discussions that were held that the City of Toronto was involved in, as well as the other sponsors.
Okay. And how did you determine how you participated in that meeting, or did you receive instructions from the city manager's office? How did that process evolve?
Through the chair, Omer's AC helped facilitate the sessions. They provided information that was going to be discussed. The meetings were broken down into different sections of bylaws that would be later on suggested or provided to the government. So at those sessions with the other sponsors, the position of the bylaws were presented, and we were asked if we had any questions or concerns about them. So we had a chance to respond or ask questions in areas where we thought might be concerning. And then I had the opportunity to also consult with the city manager's office and our chief financial officer.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Those are my questions. Speakers?
Speakers about the OMERS presentation.
Yep.
Speakers about the OMERS presentation.
Yep. Yep. So we're receiving number 1. Yep, so motion to receive number 1. All in favor? That carries. And then number 2, speakers on number 2. Sorry? Yep, sorry. I think we've covered questions of staff on number 2. Yep, okay. Speakers on number 2. So I do have 2 motions. They're kind of, so it's basically I'm asking, so our total OMERS contributions last year was $603 million divided equally between the City of Toronto and our employees. So I basically have 2 motions asking for more detailed information about how that contributions are looked after and how they're reported to staffs and to council, so we have a better understanding of how those contributions are looked after. Sorry, Matthew. And sorry, so I have 1A and I have 1B.
Can I ask you a question?
Yep.
You want this for council?
Yes.
Did you speak to the folks at OMERS? That it can be done for within 10 days?
Yeah, I was told the information could be provided.
Thank you.
And the first part, the 1A, it's also providing information in future presentations. And 1B, I'm asking for the sponsors package that came out June 5th that we haven't seen.
So the point is you're asking for information. They said they can give you information. I don't really need to know what you're asking. Yeah? Okay, thanks.
Questions of the mover? Seeing none. All in favor of the 1A? Carries. All in favor of 1B? Carries. Item is amended. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. And then our next item, sorry. Item number 23, sorry. Our last item is GG 31.23, amendment to purchase order number 7200000116 with Medallia Incorporated for digital data collection and analysis tool, held by Councillor Chang. Councillor Chang, questions of staff?
Thank you. Through the chair, is there a breakdown of how many surveys were conducted on this platform across divisions?
Thank you, Councillor. And through the chair, yes, there is a detailed breakdown. Currently, there are over 30 divisions that are using this system, and we're happy to share a detailed review of those numbers with your office today as well.
Great. Do we consolidate or cross-reference the data, or is it a siloed use of the platform? So since there could be duplicate users conducting the surveys, just wondering if there is a consolidation of data across the 30 divisions, or is it each division uses it independently?
The tool itself provides the ability to collect information from whether public members or within the city staff, as an example. Every division uses it for varying reasons, and there is a possibility for a division to choose to consolidate data, but the tool itself enables a transaction directly for data collection.
Mm-hmm. And when, for example, urban forestry does a survey, let's say, and somebody does a survey, and that creates a person potentially in a CRM, and then someone in parks does a survey, or the same person does a survey. Does the city, do all the divisions have separate CRMs? And do we envision one day having a consolidated CRM?
The CRM would be very different than what this tool does. However, there are various types of CRMs that are used across multiple divisions, and they're fit for purpose depending on what the functionality is. So there are consolidated platforms that serve as CRMs, but each division would use it for their own purposes.
So when we do surveys, we don't connect to the CRM. We don't keep track if this person has done 5 surveys with the city. Obviously, they would have the option to do the survey anonymously, but if they choose to not be anonymous, does that connect back to some, I guess, mother source of data on our city users?
Currently, this survey is independent from the overall CRM tools that we use. However, we can take this back and consult with the various divisions to understand their use case.
Mm-hmm. And is there a built-in multilingual function? Because I know a lot of divisions spend a lot of time getting the survey translated. So I'm just wondering if that's a tool that's built into this platform.
It is actually. There are a number of surveys that are conducted in multiple different languages. And one example that was held in multiple languages was a survey done for the New Canadian Event Experience Survey. It was conducted in over 25 languages recently.
So are all the divisions using this functionality? Because we've had feedback from certain divisions where they get a translation done and that causes a time drag on when that survey can be launched.
I don't know off the top, Councillor, how many of the 30 are using the multilingual features of it. We do know that it is a capability within the tool, and it is being leveraged by some.
And is it included in this contract, or is it a fee per translation or per survey when you use that functionality?
It is a feature within the tool set itself currently.
So it's built in, already available?
Yes.
And my last question is, what would be the timeline to identify potential Canadian platforms that could provide a similar service?
Our intention is to begin that review as we've outlined in the report so that we can report back to this committee and council in 2027. And as part of that evaluation, Canadian alternatives will be a consideration.
Great, thank you. Those are my questions, and I'm happy to move the item.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cheng. Councillor Holiday, questions of staff? Seeing none. Speakers? Councillor Cheng's moving the recommendations. In number 23, all in favor? That carries. Sorry, Councillor Holiday, now our last item. GG 31.41, updating administrative authorities to support digital public engagement, and 311 service delivery. You held it, Councillor Holiday. Questions of staff?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to get a bit of clarity on this. There's 2 subparts to the report. It talks about digital public engagement, and then it talks about the work done by 311 service delivery. And if I recall from the report, there's 2 parts to the 311 component. It has to do with enhancements to the front end of the 311 system, and it has to do with closing the loop. And then I think some subordinate work below that has to do with frequently connecting with the public through things such as surveys and focus groups as it pertains to 311. Do I understand that right?
Through the chair, that's correct.
So this report carves out the work of 311 and Customer Experience Division within the context that I just described from the overall digital public engagement system that the city has. Is that right?
Sorry, through the chair, can you clarify that question for me?
So this report carves out the component that I just described that 311 does on their own. So closing the loop, front-end work, specialized connections with customers that has to do with the 311 system. This report carves that work out of the overall digital public engagement system that the city has. So it kind of lets 311 do their work on their own. Is that right?
That's correct.
That
There are
in
specific
essence
programs.
that in essence is what's here. I wanted to go back to the digital public engagement system in the city. Is this report defining that, or does it already exist?
Through the chair, this report does not define that. That definition is being worked on as a result of the adopted motion MM 4013, in which the Chief Communications Officer was directed to develop formal definitions for each form of public consultation and list them on the Have Your Say Toronto website no later than the first quarter of 2027.
So the subcomponents of this report goes into detail on the digital public engagement side. It talks about the responsibility of divisions. It talks about the responsibility of the clerk's office, talks about the responsibility of centralized communications, and the exact word escapes me. Is that being defined today, or is that a commentary about what exists already?
Through the chair, that's a culmination of what exists already. The report is an intent to define or to create a framework and grant the authority to collect the information required in order to execute digital public engagement.
I'm sorry, I missed the start of that. This report is intended to do that, or it's not?
It is intended to create a framework that exists or using policies that already exist.
Okay, so I just want to understand, I'm going to separate the 311 side. I'm okay with the separation of the two, but I want to focus in on the digital public engagement. Here's a simple question. What does engagement mean? Because that's different than consultation. Is that true or not? Do I'm understanding it wrong?
Through the chair, that is true. When we refer to engagement, the city typically uses the term engagement to describe the full spectrum of ways that city staff interact with residents, from informing them to seeking input and feedback to collaborating on the development of projects. It's normally an ongoing interactive process, but when we use the term consultation, that typically means a formal time-defined process seeking feedback or advice on a specific project or policy that is open to influence.
Right, and so MM 4013 specifically talked about consultations. So where's the overall spectrum of digital engagement and the framework that goes with it? Where is that defined? How do we as council understand that program and how you've put it together and what we've approved to allow it? Is there a place I can look, a different report? Because it's not being set up here today. You said it was already existing. Or is there one coming?
So if I could maybe start and then I think maybe defer back over there. I think this is baseline program framework that sets out the authority process. And then through the work that's intended to come forward, more policy work and definitions will come forward. This is really the baseline establishment for the new sort of state of engagement intended through the adoption of this report.
Okay, Mr. Chair, may I request a second round? I think this is really important. So do I understand this correctly? This is far bigger than the separation of 311 out of that overarching program. That's a very specific action for reasons that are laid out here. And I think this goes to council. So this is going to council. So council seems to be defining, sorry, too many screens open. This is going to council, and so this is defining the digital public engagement program. That's what this document is doing. Is that correct? Okay. Can you tell me simply then, what's the role of communications in this? Because there's something here about collection of personal information. Does that rest with the divisions or does that rest with communications?
Through the speaker, that is with communications where we will oversee the execution and the standards.
Okay.
However, as well as we will also oversee the use of tools, and it will allow us to issue notifications through the Have Your Say website, engage with people on social media, and send notifications.
Can you reconcile for me this idea that public engagement is a broad spectrum and the website is called Have Your Say? Could you be doing engagement that doesn't collect your say?
I think this goes back to the definition question. I live in a world of marketing, and engagement means has a more encompassing framework, and so we want to deliver that definition for you by Q1 of 2027.
Okay. Could you give me some assurance that when the website goes live, that members of the pub, sorry, maybe it is live, but as the website gets articulated, that these ideas will be really clear to the public, where there's an opportunity where the city is collecting feedback for a purpose and will use it, versus the city is giving information out. It's a one-way. Do you think there'll be a way to really make that clear so that people don't mix up the expectation?
Through the chair, yes, there will be a way. We have a plain language directive.
Okay.
And we are committed to making sure that our information is legible and easy to understand.
Okay, so that, I guess my last question is the hardest one. I'll see if I can make this up here right. Fundamental to the work that I do as a member of council is that I must constantly reality test representations made to me about public opinion, or public conclusions, or feedback, or pooled feedback, or overall sentiment. My job means that I have to reality test the information that comes to me. If we centralize the mechanisms for consultation with the public, and it's set behind a couple of screens, so that's the first administrative screen through communications, and then secondly through the divisions, and then it finally comes to me in a report. How do I do that reality testing? How do I believe the words on the page are reflective? Or how do I challenge those or pick at them or ask the right questions that I'm supposed to ask to make sure that I understand what those conclusions are? How will that work if I'm the end recipient of the information? Can you help me understand the vision for this process going forward? Because those are fundamental things. People should be able to feel confidently that they reflect the public consultation that was done.
Through the chair, the plan is to create dashboards, reporting mechanisms in a unified way.
Okay.
That is all work that will need to take place and has not been completed yet.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the staff for answering my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Holladay. Councillor Cheng.
I just want to pull a thread from Councillor Holliday's questions with regard to if there would be some consultation with councillors as you map out this process, because it sounds like there's still some, let's call it clay, that hasn't been fully formed yet. And this is a good moment to just have some discussions, because the data that is created through these surveys is really important in terms of both the operations of the city, but also our representation of our constituents. And further to that, the reach that councillors have into our communities is often stronger than the city's email or social media. And so that partnership, and I understand there is a divide and perhaps even a tension. Sometimes we have different goals, but how can we work together to ensure that people can we can maximize the participation of our constituents, and that's at some point that we're looped into the process at the right time.
Through the chair, yes. Councillors are critical partners. You know your constituents better than anybody in this room. We will consult with you as we roll out this program.
Great. That's my only question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cheng. Speakers on this item? Councillor Holyday?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll support this going forward, but with caution. And here's the challenge that I have with it. I have no issue with the carve out of 311 so that they can do their work beside the digital engagement system that's laid out here. Makes total sense. They're very unique in the work that they're doing. I think the thing that I'm not fully comfortable with is the in-depth description of what the digital engagement platform will mean and exactly what it is that we're agreeing to. It's very high level in here. And the reason I'm very cautious about it is because it is so central to the work that we do. When the words go into a report to council that recommends a policy change, there's often a section that talks about public input. It's really important that we're able to take that apart and figure out how we got to that point. And I'm sure we can. I'm just not sure what all of this means because it's suggesting a framework, but we don't have all of that information. Yet it says to council, authorize this to continue. I just want to make sure that we've got it right. And I think one of the fundamental things that I've learned along this journey is that it's really important that you initially set the expectations with the public about what it is you're asking of them. If you're asking them to provide information that truly means consultation, that means it will help shape the public policy, then you have to spell that out up front. And people need to expect and understand where their information will go and how it will be used. If it's something called a quote-unquote engagement, which could mean a lot of things, and sometimes it means the city's just going to come tell you about the decision it made, that's really important too, because sometimes people may feel the process is soliciting their feedback when the decision was already done. And that is really, really problematic when those two are misaligned. People lose faith in the process, they lose confidence in government. And I want to be absolutely sure that these tools are used at the right place at the right time and that people are really, really clear about when they start their interaction with the city of what they're being asked for and what the feedback is. So this may be the start of a larger process, but I would feel much better when I see the full process to be fully supportive of it. Thank you for hearing me out, and I hope that we'll get more information about this as this framework evolves.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Holyday. Really appreciate you addressing your concerns. Other speakers? Councillor Cheng? No? Okay. So we have the recommendations before us, moved by Councillor Holyday. All in favor? And that carries. Bylaws. We have bylaws. Councillor Holyday, would you like to move the bylaws?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. That confirmatory bills to confirm the legislative proceedings of the General Government Committee acting under delegated authority at meeting 31 on July 20, 2026 be declared as bylaws and pass subject to section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006.
All in favor? That carries. And that is our last item of business. I'd just like to thank everybody. This is our last meeting of the term of the General Government Committee. I'd just like to thank all of the members for all of your hard work and your dedication, all of the staff that report to the committee. I want to thank you on behalf of the committee for all of your work, to the clerk's department. Thank you so much. As people always say to me, general government, what do you do? And I always have a quick response. I'm like, we keep the wheels of government moving. So thank you very much for everybody's dedication. And I was just joking with Matthew. I said, you know, we all worked very collaboratively together. I went through 4 years and I didn't have to touch the gavel. So thank you very much. And I hope everybody gets a chance to catch your breath and have a good summer.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chair.